The edge of the perceived expanse was not a place most pilots visited. The region was far from any trade routes, and the stars here burned in cold colors blue, white, and pale silver. Captain Elias Morgan liked it that way. Elias was a tall man, in his late 40s, with short black hair turning gray at the sides. His ship, the Horizon's Light, was his only home. For years, he had been working as an independent surveyor, mapping asteroid belts and scanning uncharted moons. It was lonely work, but it paid enough for fuel and kept him away from the noisy politics of the core worlds. That day, his scanners picked up something unusual. It was a faint signal so weak that the computer almost ignored it. It was not a regular communication pulse. It sounded like an old distress beacon, the kind that had been used decades ago, long before newer models replaced them. Elias frowned. A distress beacon out here. He adjusted the ship's sensors, trying to locate it. The signal came from a small moon orbiting a dead planet. The moon was not on any updated star maps, only mentioned in old exploration records. Those records described it as uninhabitable, low atmosphere, abandoned. Still, a distress call was a distress call. Elias turned the ship toward the coordinates. The closer he got, the more he could see the surface. The moon was a wasteland of broken stone, scattered metal ruins, and blackened craters. His instruments detected high levels of radiation in some areas, as if the moon had been a battlefield long ago. Elias landed the Horizon's Light on a flat plateau near the signal source. The air was thin but breathable with a filter mask. He put on his light armor suit, attached the mask, and stepped outside. The ground crunched under his boots. Covered in fine gray dust, the signal grew louder on his handheld tracker as he walked. It led him through the ruins of what once might have been a small settlement, collapsed buildings, shattered walls, and strange alien symbols carved into broken stones. And then he heard it. Not the mechanical ping of the beacon, but something else, a faint sound, a voice. Elias slowed his steps, scanning the rubble. Behind a collapsed wall, he saw movement. At first, he thought it was a wounded animal. But then she stepped into the light, a small alien child, no more than 8 years old in human terms. Her skin was a pale blue color, her eyes silver-like moonlight. She was thin, her clothes torn and covered in dust. She clutched a piece of bent metal in her hands as if it was a weapon. Though it was far too small to be dangerous, the child froze when she saw him. Her silver eyes were wide with fear. Elias raised his hand slowly to show he meant no harm. "It's all right," he said gently through his masked speaker. "I'm not here to hurt you." The child's lips trembled. For a moment, it seemed she might run. Instead, she took a shaky step forward and whispered something so softly he almost didn't hear it. "Will you be my father?" The words hit him harder than any weapon. Elias felt his throat tighten. He hadn't expected this. He had never been married, never had children. His life had been the stars, the ship, and the long silence between ports. But there was something in her voice, a deep loneliness, a desperate hope that cut through all his hesitation. He knelt down so his eyes were level with hers. "What's your name?" he asked gently. She hesitated, then said, "Lyra." "Lyra," Elias repeated, as if testing the sound of it. "My name is Elias." The wind howled softly over the ruins, carrying a thin mist of dust. Somewhere in the distance, a piece of metal creaked and fell. Elias glanced around. This was no place for anyone to stay, especially a child. The radiation pockets alone could kill her in days. And if there had once been a war here, scavenger drones or other dangers could still be around. He extended his hand. "Come with me. My ship is safe." Lyra looked at his hand, then at his face. After a long moment, she placed her small fingers into his glove palm. Her hand felt light and cold. They walked together back through the ruins. Lyra stayed close to him, her eyes darting at every shadow. Once, she flinched at a faint buzzing sound overhead. Elias looked up and saw a damaged drone hovering far away, watching them before disappearing behind the broken buildings. By the time they reached the Horizon's Light, Elias's mind was racing. A living child on a supposedly dead moon. It made no sense. Who had left her here? How long had she been alone? Inside the ship, the air was warm and clean. Elias removed his mask and armor, then gave Lyra a blanket and some water. She drank slowly. At first, as if unsure it was real. "Are there more of you?" he asked softly. Lyra shook her head. "No more. All gone." Elias's heart sank. He wanted to ask what had happened, but her trembling hands told him she wasn't ready to speak about it. Instead, he set some food on the table, simple nutrient packs. She ate quietly, her silver eyes watching him between bites. When she finished, she looked down at the table and whispered again, "Will you stay? Will you not leave me?" Elias met her gaze. The tired lines on his face softened. "I'm not going anywhere," he said firmly. That night, as the ship rose from the moon's surface and the stars spread out before them, Elias knew something had changed. His life of quiet, solitary travel was over. The galaxy was dangerous, and whatever had happened to Lyra's people could still be a threat. But he had made a silent promise to her the moment she took his hand. He would protect her, no matter what. Somewhere, deep in the back of his mind, a voice whispered that this choice would pull him into dangers he could not yet imagine. But looking at Lyra curled up in the blanket, breathing steadily, he knew one thing for certain: he would not walk away. Elias had been traveling with Lyra for 3 days now. In that time, he had learned little about her past, only fragments. She spoke in short sentences, sometimes staring off into space as if her mind wandered far away. In the mornings, Elias would find her in the control room, sitting in the co-pilot's chair, watching the stars. She would tilt her head slightly whenever a new constellation came into view, as if she recognized them. One morning, while checking the ship's scanners, Elias noticed Lyra's gaze fixed on a point far ahead. "What do you see?" he asked. She pointed. "A ship." Elias frowned. The scanners showed nothing. He adjusted the settings, waited, and then there it was, a faint energy reading. So far away it barely registered. "You saw that before the computer did," he said quietly. Lyra didn't answer, but her small hands gripped the armrests tightly. Elias could see the tension in her posture. Whoever she had been hiding from on that ruined moon, they might still be searching for her. Over the next days, Elias tried to make her feel safe. He gave her small tasks, checking engine readings, sorting supply crates, even helping cook simple meals. At first, she performed the tasks mechanically, as if waiting for him to send her away. But slowly, she began to take interest. Once, when he showed her how to adjust the navigation display, she asked a quiet question: "Where does that path go?" Elias traced the glowing line on the screen. "That leads toward the Orion Gate, a cluster of trade stations and colonies." She hesitated. "Will we go there?" "Maybe," he said. "But for now, we're going somewhere safe." She didn't press for details, and he didn't offer them. Truth was, Elias wasn't sure what safe meant anymore. He had picked up a child from a battlefield moon, a child who could see ships before scanners could. That kind of ability would draw attention, good and bad. That night, as the ship sailed silently through dark space, Elias lay in his cabin, staring at the ceiling. He thought about her words on the moon, "Will you be my father?" He thought about the way she watched the stars, like someone searching for something lost. He had promised not to leave her, but promises were easy when you didn't know the dangers ahead. The next morning, Elias decided they needed to talk. He found Lyra in the cargo bay, sitting cross-legged on top of a supply crate, watching the maintenance drone repair a loose panel. "Lyra," he said gently, "I want to ask about what happened before I found you." Her silver eyes flickered with uncertainty. "You will send me away if I tell you?" "No," Elias said firmly. "I told you I'm not leaving you. I mean that." She looked down at her hands, twisting her fingers together. "My people, we live on many worlds, but others wanted our knowledge. They attacked, many ran. Many didn't make it." Elias felt a heavy weight settle in his chest. "And you?" "I hid," she whispered. "I hid until there was no one left." He wanted to ask more about her abilities, about how she had survived, but he could see her eyes filling with quiet pain. Pushing her now would only hurt her more. "All right," he said softly. That's enough for today, she gave him a small nod, as if grateful he didn't press further. 2 days later, the horizon's light passed near an uninhabited gas giant. The planet's swirling clouds of blue and green filled the viewing glass, and Lyra stood silently beside Elias, her small face reflecting the light. It's beautiful, she said, almost in a whisper. It is, Elias agreed. But beauty can be dangerous. The storms down there could tear a ship apart in seconds. Lyra's eyes stayed fixed on the planet. I think my people once had cities that floated in the clouds. Elias glanced at her sharply. You've been there. She shook her head. No, but I remember stories. The way she spoke made Elias wonder if these stories were something more, memories passed down. Maybe even genetic knowledge. The thought made his stomach tighten. If that was true, it meant she carried things inside her mind that others would kill for. That night, trouble came. Elias was running a diagnostic when approximate. The horizon's light floated silently through the darkness, its engines set to low power to avoid detection. Elias had changed their route twice in the last week, each time choosing a path far from trade lanes. But he knew they were being followed. Lyra knew it too. Sometimes she would wake in the middle of the night and walk quietly into the control room, staring out at the stars as if she could feel something moving in the distance. Elias had stopped asking how she knew. Every time she said the same thing, they're closer. One morning, Elias was checking the navigation systems when Lyra's voice came from behind him. They found us again. Elias turned. You're sure? She nodded, eyes fixed on the black void ahead. Not far. Maybe 2 hours. Elias glanced at the scanners. Nothing yet. But he had learned not to doubt her. All right, he said, activating the controls. Then we'll make it harder for them. He plotted a course toward the Hadrian Nebula, a massive cloud of gas and dust that could hide them from most sensors. The problem was, the nebula was dangerous, filled with gravitational eddies, lightning storms, and unstable magnetic fields. Navigating through it was risky, but being caught was worse. 2 hours later, the scanners finally picked up the faint signature of a ship closing in from behind. Sleek, fast, and clearly armed, Elias tightened his grip on the controls. They're still gaining, Lyra said, her voice calm but tense. Then we go into the nebula, Elias replied. The horizon's light angled toward the swirling mass of colors ahead. Blues, greens, and deep purples twisted like liquid light, and lightning flashed inside the clouds. As they entered, the ship's sensors began to flicker. The engines hummed unevenly, reacting to the nebula's strange energy. Lyra moved to the co-pilot's seat, strapping in. I can guide us, she said. Elias glanced at her. You've been in one of these before. She shook her head. No, but I can feel the safe paths. It sounded impossible, but then again, so did seeing ships before scanners could. He nodded. All right, you tell me where to turn. The nebula closed around them like a thick fog. Visibility dropped to almost nothing, and bright flashes of lightning illuminated jagged clouds of dust and rock. Left, Lyra said suddenly. Elias turned the ship sharply, just as a violent magnetic storm tore through the space they had been moments before. The readings on his screen spiked dangerously. Down, she instructed. He lowered their altitude, skimming past a massive shard of rock that drifted slowly in the gas cloud. For the next hour, Elias followed her instructions without question. Every time she spoke, it kept them clear of danger, sometimes by mere seconds. But the pursuing ship was still there. Even in the nebula, they had found a way to track them. A sudden jolt shook the horizon's light. The rear shields flared as energy blasts struck them. They're firing. Elias shouted. Another hit rattled the ship, and warning alarms began to sound. Hold on. Elias pushed the engines harder, diving into a cluster of swirling dust clouds. He triggered a burst from the thrusters, spinning the ship into a narrow gap between two massive rock formations. The enemy followed, their bright shots cutting through the gas clouds. Lyra's voice was steady. Ahead, there's a way out. Elias didn't see anything on the scanners, but he trusted her. He aimed the ship where she pointed, weaving between floating debris as the nebula's lightning flashed around them. Suddenly, they burst through into a clear corridor of space, a tunnel inside the nebula, carved naturally by magnetic currents. "This leads out?" Elias asked. Lyra nodded. "Yes, but they'll follow. We need to hide." Elias scanned the area. "There," he said, spotting a hollowed asteroid drifting near the tunnel wall. He guided the ship into the shadow of the rock, powering down. Everything but life support. The horizon's light went silent. They floated in darkness, hidden from view. Moments later, the enemy ship shot past the tunnel entrance, still searching. They didn't see the hidden asteroid or the ship tucked inside it. Elias and Lyra stayed quiet, listening to the faint hum of the systems. Minutes passed. Then, finally, the enemy's signal faded. Elias let out a slow breath. That was too close. Lyra gave a small smile. "We made it." He looked at her with a mix of relief and curiosity. "How did you know where to go? How did you see that tunnel?" She hesitated, then said, "I don't know. I just feel the stars, the space between them. It's like they tell me where the safe paths are." Elias leaned back in his chair. "That's not something most people can do." She didn't reply, but he could see from her expression that there was more she wasn't saying. After the danger passed, they continued toward a small repair station hidden in an asteroid field. The ship had taken damage during the chase, and they needed supplies. The station was quiet, run by an old mechanic named Ras, who owed Elias a favor, while Ras worked on the ship. Elias and Lyra stayed in the small docking bay. She walked slowly round the station, studying everything: the old ships, the flickering lights, the strange alien tools. Elias noticed how her silver eyes took in every detail, as if memorizing it. "You've never been to a station before?" he asked. She shook her head. "Not like this. My people didn't build places like this." "What did they build?" She hesitated. "Cities in the sky, gardens that floated in the light of 3 suns, water that sang when the wind touched it." Elias smiled faintly. "Sounds beautiful." Her voice grew quieter. It was. That night, as they prepared to leave, Elias caught sight of something on the station's security screen to unknown ships entering the asteroid field. "They found us again," he said. Lyra moved closer, her face pale. "We have to go now," Elias agreed. They launched the Horizon's light, weaving between asteroids as the enemy ships closed in. This time, Elias didn't wait for them to get close. He pushed the engines to maximum and aimed for open space. The asteroids whirled past, some so close they scraped the shields. Lyra guided him again, calling out turns and safe passages, her voice calm even as the enemy fire lit up the darkness behind them. Finally, with one last sharp turn around a spinning rock, they broke free into the open void. The stars stretched around them once more, and Elias hit the jump controls. The ship leapt into hyperspace, leaving the danger far behind. When they finally slowed to cruising speed, Elias looked over at Lyra. She was staring out at the stars, her expression unreadable. "You saved us," he said quietly. She turned toward him, her silver eyes steady. "I told you I can feel the paths." Elias nodded, but inside, he was more certain than ever. Lyra was not an ordinary child, and whatever made her special was exactly why. They were being hunted. He didn't know how far he'd have to run to keep her safe, but he did know one thing: he wasn't letting her go. Lyra sat in the co-pilot's seat, her legs tucked under her as she studied a star chart. Her silver eyes scanned the glowing lines and coordinates as if she had been reading them all her life. "Do you know this route?" Elias asked, curious. Lyra tilted her head. "I think so. It passes near the Anarus belt." Elias raised an eyebrow. "The Anarus belt isn't on this chart." She looked up at him, almost shyly. "It is for me." That answer stayed with him. There were too many questions piling up in his mind. Who exactly was Lyra? Why could she sense ships, feel safe paths through dangerous space, and recall places that weren't even recorded on modern maps? He decided it was time to find out. 2 days later, Elias brought the Horizon's light to a stop near a lonely space station, hidden inside a hollow asteroid. It was called Archive Station 9, one of the oldest data repositories left from the early exploration age. Few people visited it anymore. Most preferred faster, newer databases. But Elias knew this place kept records the newer ones, didn't? The station's docking bay was quiet. A single automated drone guided their ship in, and the old airlocks groaned. As they sealed inside, the station smelled faintly of dust and metal. Lights flickered in the long corridors, and the walls were lined with ancient data terminals. There was no crew, only a central AI that handled requests. Elias approached the main console, its screen glowing dimly. Search historical archives, he said. Keywords: Lyra, Silver-Eye people, floating cities. Triple suns. The AI's voice was slow and mechanical. Processing. Match found. Displaying classified historical record. The screen shifted. To show images tall, elegant alien beings with pale blue skin and eyes like molten silver. Their cities floated among clouds or hovered above crystal lakes. Ships of strange, beautiful design sailed through their skies. The AI continued. Species designation: Orlis, known for advanced energy manipulation, deep space navigation instincts, and peaceful unification of multiple worlds. Civilization. Destroyed approximately 70 standard years ago during the War of Convergence. Lyra stepped closer, her eyes locked on the screen. That's my people, she whispered. Elias glanced at her. You're Orlis, she nodded slowly. I didn't remember the name. But yes, the AI went on, surviving Orlis are believed extinct. No confirmed living members recorded in 70 years. Genetic data is preserved in fragments. Remaining technology hidden in unknown star locations. Accessible only through encoded biological keys of direct Orlis lineage. Elias felt his chest tighten. A biological key. That meant they're hunting you because you can unlock something. He said. Lyra looked at him, her expression unreadable. I think so. I've had dreams of places, of gates made of light and songs in the air. I think those are the places they want. Elias studied the screen again. If the records were true, the technology of the Orlis could change the balance of power in the galaxy. In the wrong hands, it wouldn't just endanger Lyra, it could spark another war. He pulled up more data, digging deeper. The files revealed that the Orlis had been more than skilled navigators. They had created a network of star maps, hidden within living memory, passed genetically to each generation. Only a living Orlis could find these hidden places. Elias shut down the console and turned to Lyra. You're the last one who can do this. That's why they won't stop chasing you. She looked down. Then maybe I should let them find me. If they get what they want, maybe they'll stop hurting others. Elias knelt in front of her, his voice firm. No, you're not their tool. You're not their key. You're a person, Lyra. You deserve to choose your own path. Her silver eyes met his. But what if running forever makes people die too? Elias didn't have an answer for that. He only knew one thing: he couldn't hand her over. Before they could leave, the station's warning alarms blared. The AI's voice echoed through the corridors. Incoming vessels detected. Docking bay breach in 5 minutes. Elias cursed under his breath. They found us. He grabbed Lyra's hand, and they ran back toward the horizon's light. The station's dim lights flickered red as heavy docking clamps began to engage on the outer hull. They reached the ship just as a loud metallic clang echoed through the bay. Another ship had docked, hand not in peace. Elias sealed the airlock and powered up the engines. The docking clamps refused to release. They're locking us in, he said. Lyra moved to the controls. I can override it. There's a power link from the clamps to the station's control grid. Elias gave her a quick, doubtful look. You've done that before. She shook her head. No, but I can feel the system. It's like music. I just have to change the notes. Her small fingers danced over the console, tapping commands Elias didn't even recognize. A moment later, the clamps disengaged with a heavy click. Elias wasted no time. He blasted the ship out of the docking bay. The pursuing vessel's weapons lit up the dark, sending streaks of energy past them. The chase was brutal. The enemy ship was faster and better armed every time Elias dodged. Another shot came close to hitting them. Lyra's voice cut through the chaos. Turn toward the dark cluster. Elias hesitated. The dark cluster was a region of unstable gravity. Well, it's dangerous to navigate without precise coordinates. Trust me, she urged out. Elias turned the ship, plunging into the blackness. Immediately, the stars vanished from view, replaced by swirling shadows and distant flashes of light. The enemy followed, but the gravity fields began pulling at both ships. Lyra's hands gripped the co-pilot controls, guiding their ship through the invisible maze twice. Elias felt the hull shudder as gravitational eddies tried to pull them off course. But Lyra's instincts were flawless. Finally, they burst out of the cluster's far side. The pursuing ship was nowhere to be seen. Either they had been pulled into one of the gravity traps, or they had given up the chase for now. Elias slowed the ship to a safer speed. His hands still gripped the controls tightly, but his breathing began to steady. Lyra leaned back, exhaustion in her face. "We can't keep doing this forever." "I know," Elias said quietly. "We need a plan, not just to run, but to end this." Her silver eyes met his. "If we find the places in my dreams, maybe we can use them before they do." Elias thought about it. It was dangerous. If they followed her visions, they might find the ancient Orless technology, and they might also draw every hunter in the galaxy straight to them. But maybe it was the only way to stop the pursuit for good. That night, as the horizon's light sailed through the quiet dark, Elias stood by the viewport, staring at the distant stars. Lyra joined him, her small hand resting against the glass. "Those are the gates," she said softly, pointing at a cluster of faint lights. "One of them. At least, I can feel it." Elias followed her gaze. "Then that's where we'll go." Lyra looked up at him, uncertainty and hope mixed in her eyes. "Even if it's dangerous?" He smiled faintly. "Especially if it's dangerous, because if we don't, someone else will, and they won't be thinking about what's right." She nodded slowly, and for the first time since the ruined moon, she looked determined. The truth about who she was had changed everything. They were no longer just running. Now, they had a destination. And Elias knew one thing: if they were going to face the galaxy's dangers, they'd do it together. Haven Station was far from the core worlds, but it was one of the safest places in the outer sectors. Merchants, travelers, and settlers often came here to trade and rest. It wasn't perfect, but Elias hoped it would be the start of something new for both him and Lyra. He glanced over to where she sat in the co-pilot's seat, clutching the small plush toy he had found for her on a supply run 2 days ago. She was quiet, but her silver eyes watched everything. She had seen too much for her age, but Elias could see the small sparks of curiosity returning to her. "Ready?" he asked gently. Lyra nodded. They stepped out of the ship together. The docking bay smelled faintly of oil and warm metal. Engineers moved between ships, carrying tools, while security officers checked cargo. A few people glanced at them, but quickly looked away. Out here, no one asked too many questions. Elias had one goal: find a safe place to stay and start figuring out a future. As they walked toward the station's main hall, Lyra stayed close beside him. Every now and then, she looked up at him, as if checking to make sure he was still there. Elias gave her a reassuring smile each time. The meeting they found a small office near the residential section. A woman in a dark blue uniform sat behind a desk, her brown hair tied back. Her name badge read Officer Maraden. Elias explained the situation carefully without mentioning the details of the battle, or the exact location where he had found Lyra. The fewer people who knew, the safer she would be. Mara studied them both. "For a moment, if you're looking for temporary housing, we can arrange something. But if you plan to stay, you need to register her." Elias's jaw tightened slightly. Registering Lyra meant adding her name to the station's records. It was a good thing for protection, but it also meant someone somewhere might notice. Still, he knew they couldn't live completely hidden forever. "We'll register," he said firmly. Mara nodded and handed him a data pad. "Fill this out. I'm guessing she's not human?" Elias shook his head. "No. But she's with me. She's my daughter." At those words, Lyra's head turned toward him sharply. Her silver eyes widened just a little. For a moment, she looked like she might speak, but instead, she reached out and quietly held his hand. Settling in fear, assigned living quarters were small but clean to rooms. A tiny kitchen and a view of the stars through a narrow window. Elias didn't care about the size. It was safe. That first evening, they unpacked a few things from the ship. Lyra placed her plush toy on the small shelf beside her bed. Elias cooked a simple meal from the supplies they had bought. Warm bread, stew, and fruit from one of the alien traders. Over dinner, Lyra finally spoke more than a few words. "This place is quiet," she said softly. Elias smiled. "Yes, and no one will hurt you here." She looked at him for a long moment, as if testing the truth of his words. Then she gave a small nod and returned to her food, a warning from the past for the next few days. Life was calm. Elias took small surveying jobs from the station's guild to earn credits, while Lyra explored the safer parts of the station, always with a locator bracelet on her wrist, so he could find her at any time. But on the fifth day, something changed. While walking back to their quarters, Elias noticed a figure watching him from across the corridor. The man was tall, wearing a long coat, and his eyes were hidden under the shadow of his hood. When Elias looked directly at him, the man turned away and disappeared into the crowd. That night, Elias checked the station's news channels. There was nothing about the man, but a new report caught his eye: activity detected near the Perseid Expanse. Unknown ships moving between the dead worlds. His stomach tightened. Whoever had destroyed Lyra's home might still be searching for survivors. The choice. A week later, Officer Mara visited them. "Elias, there's something you should know," she said quietly. "A ship arrived yesterday. No registration. No clear origin. The crew asked questions about an alien child with silver eyes." Elias's hand curled into a fist. "Did you tell them anything?" "Of course not," Mara replied. "But I think they're still here. Be careful." That night, Elias sat at the small table in their quarters, staring at the stars through the window. He had promised Lyra safety, but if danger had already found them here, staying might not be enough. When Lyra came over and stood beside him, he put an arm around her shoulders. "Lyra, do you like it here?" She hesitated, then said, "Yes, but if we have to leave, I will go. As long as you come to." Elias felt a deep, quiet strength in her words. She was still a child, but she had already learned that safety wasn't about the walls around you, it was about the people beside you. The departure at nights later. A shadow moved outside their door. Elias heard the faint sound of someone trying to override the lock. He was ready. The moment the panel beeped, Elias opened the door fast, catching the intruder off guard. It was the hooded man. Before he could speak, Elias pulled him forward, twisted his arm, and shoved him against the wall. "Why are you looking for her?" Elias demanded. The man's voice was calm but cold. "Orders. She is important. My employers will have her." "You tell your employers this," Elias growled. "If they come for her, I will make sure they regret it." He shoved the man away. The hooded figure disappeared down the corridor without another word. That was enough for Elias. The next morning, he booked a small freighter berth. They couldn't stay on Haven Station any longer. A father's Prometheus, the horizon's light lifted off once again. Lyra stood beside him in the cockpit. Below them, the curved shape of Haven Station shrank into the distance. Ahead lay the endless stars. "Where are we going?" she asked. "Somewhere safe," Elias said. "It might take a while to find, but we'll keep moving until we do." Lyra was quiet for a moment. Then she said softly, "You are my father now. That means we're home, even if we're in the stars." Elias looked down at her and felt something warm settle in his chest. "Yes," he said, "we are home." The ship's engines flared, and the stars stretched into lines as they jumped into hyperspace to travelers bound not by blood, but by choice. And in that moment, Elias knew one thing with absolute certainty. No matter how far they had to go, no matter who came after them, he would never walk away.